The movie Maleficent from 2014, starring Angelina Jolie as Maleficent, the villain from Sleeping Beauty. And going into this movie, I thought that this was going to be more of an origin story, and it is an origin story, but it's also sort of tells a similar but different story, or a different version of the story of Sleeping Beauty. So it is sort of like a remake, a reimagining maybe, a retelling, however you want to look at it, but I did not really like this that much. I might even give it below 5, which for me is very low, and I'll get into why I didn't love this. It didn't really make me want to watch the sequel. There's another one of these movies, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, but if people really want me to, I'll do it. But if people don't say anything, I'm probably not going to do it. Maybe I'll watch it on my own time out of curiosity, but if people want me to review it, I'll do it. Anyways, yeah, this movie, it could have been better. And we'll get into the notes of the things that I didn't like, but it just didn't do it for me. I much preferred the original cartoon, I would say. But yeah, let's look at the Rotten Tomatoes score. So people, I think, liked this. Oh, the critics only gave it 54%, though, a little over half. But the audience loved this, 70%. Let's look at the critics' consensus. So Angelina Jolie's magnetic performance outshines Maleficent's dazzling special effects. Unfortunately, the movie around them fails to justify all that impressive effort. And I kind of agree to a certain extent that there's too much CGI, and I get why they have so much CGI. They have all these like whimsical creatures and crazy landscapes that they want to capture, but it just felt like a little too much for me at times. I get you need some of that, but I feel like it could have been toned down a little bit. There could have been a little bit more practical stuff, but just so much CGI. And some of it was cool, but some of it just was simply not. Let's read some of the reviews, though. Let's see. This is the basic plots given by Rotten Tomatoes. As a beautiful young woman of pure heart, Maleficent, Angelina Jolie, has an idyllic life in a forest kingdom. When an invading army threatens the land, Maleficent rises up to become its fiercest protector. However, a terrible betrayal hardens her heart and twists her into a creature bent on revenge. She engages in an epic battle with the invading king's successor, then curses his newborn daughter, Aurora, realizing only later that the child holds the key to peace in the kingdom. So that's basically the plot. As the sum of all its parts, Maleficent is a downright fun film. That's a top critic, positive review. Angelina Jolie is good in the film, and I do think kids will dig this movie. She does do a good job. I have to admit, she's a good pick for the character. I just don't think what's done with the movie is necessary. I think, just watch the original film. And I'll get into it more into my notes. Don't you worry. It's a splendid looking film. The effects are striking throughout, whether they are dramatic battle confrontations between humans and the forces of the natural world or small moments of delicate detail. And I agree with that there are parts where the movie does look good. I can't deny that the movie looks good at times, but I do just think there could have been more practical effects than there are, but that's the way it was. That's the way it is still, I would say. Maleficent makes 2 fatal mistakes, the first being a problem of narrative. I think I kind of agree with that. There's with these villain movies, that's sort of hard to balance sometimes because you have to make them evil, but you also have to make them likable. So, and I definitely get that feeling in this, that they were struggling with that. At least that's what it feels like to me. Let's read one more bad review. By the end, one could not help but wish that Disney had left Maleficent a fascinating villain instead of a dull protagonist. Again, I kind of agree with that. It takes away from her character that they're trying to make her good. They're trying to make her too good. And that she's not good. She's evil. She is the mistress of evil. And maybe that's what they do in the second one, but again, I don't want to watch the second one because I didn't like this one very much. Let's read one more bad review. This isn't Sleeping Beauty as seen through the eyes of the wickedest of Disney films. Instead, it's a mouse house live action revisionist fairy tale that inexplicably transforms the Maleficent into a misunderstood anti-hero. Yes, I would agree with that. And I don't like it. But yeah, that's the Rotten Tomatoes page. So 54% for the critics and 70% for the audience. So the audience generally liked it. I agree more with the critics on this one. But I still might have even given it a lower score. We'll see. 6.9 out of 10. Yeah, people like this. I don't know. Just didn't do it for me. It undeniably does some things well, but it just... a lot of it just wasn't for me, I think. As well as... I don't like that... like I said, I don't like that they made Maleficent good. They made her too good. And that's the problem with a lot of these villain-focused movies. That they feel that they have to make them at least a little bit good, and that sort of ruins the character in some ways, in my opinion. Angelina Jolie, of course, plays Maleficent. Let's look. I don't know anybody else, but let's just keep going down here. Yeah, I don't know any of the other actors, so we'll just move on. Let's see how this did in the box office. I think it did pretty well. Oh my gosh, did this do well in the box office. $180 million. This is in 2014, remember. $180 million for the budget, which is a huge budget, and it makes sense because it's not an animated movie, but it has a lot of animated parts to it. It has a lot of CGI, so it makes sense that it's that expensive. Plus, a star like Angelina Jolie can't be cheap. But yeah, $180 million budget, but a gross worldwide of $759 million. So definitely worth the budget and then some, I gotta say. I'm just gonna real quick blow my nose. I might put my water in the fridge as well. I'll be right back. Sometimes you gotta do a quick nose blow. Alright. And back to it, and I think that's it. Yeah, 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb, which is pretty good. And like I said, this movie is on Disney Plus. If anybody wants to watch it, if you have never seen it and you want to, if you don't agree with what I'm saying and you think that it sounds interesting, check it out by all means. But yeah, like I said, not really my cup of tea, but I do like things about it. It's definitely better than like Biodome or some other movies that I've given below 5, but I didn't like it that much. That's all there is to it. Let's look at my notes for this one. Let's get right on into it. It's 8:33. We got a lot of time, but so let's get into these notes. We got quite a few, so maybe this will take a minute, a little bit more than a minute, maybe even. Iron burns fairies, apparently. So this creates some lore. I don't even think this is in the first movie, in Sleeping Beauty. But yeah, apparently iron burns fairies, and apparently Maleficent is a fairy. I didn't even understand that. I don't think that's made clear in Sleeping Beauty. But yeah, this movie, it wants to explain things that don't need explaining, I think, in a lot of cases. But this movie mostly looks good. So I do think there's too much CGI, but I can't deny that sometimes it just looks stunning. These huge landscapes and these creatures, sometimes it works. So there's a bird, a raven in Sleeping Beauty, and there's a raven in this movie, but they changed something about it, and I don't really like the change. I get why they do it, so they have someone for Angelina Jolie to interact with, so it's not just her talking to the camera, but it feels weird. So she sees this raven getting captured by a farmer, and the raven gets put in a net, so she uses her magic to turn the raven into a human being, and then the farmer's like, oh my god, what the hell, and he runs away. And the raven becomes his servant or whatever, just like the raven is in Sleeping Beauty. But he does not turn into all these different creatures. That is something different. That I don't get that. Well, I get it that they added it to this movie, but I think I like in the movie him just being a bird. It's more interesting. But yeah, they're like, oh yeah, we need someone for Angelina Jolie to interact with. So let's turn the bird into a man. I think that's a little bit lame, but oh well. Um, and yeah, he speaks English. Would he speak English if he's a bird? I'm trying to. I'm putting too much. Trying to put too much sense into this or something, but I'm overthinking it. That's the term I'm trying to say. But maybe I'm overthinking this, but I think he wouldn't speak English, but I guess magic. You can always chalk it up into this type of movie. In these fantasy movies, if something doesn't make sense, you can usually be like, oh well, maybe it was magic. So it's plot armor, but moving on from that note. The first interaction between Maleficent and the Birdman is weird. Yeah, they're some of the dialogue in this particular case, the dialogue in this scene just felt a little weird to me. That's all that note means. The Birdman is suddenly not dirty, so it's very quick. Like after he changed, because he's dirty, he's a bird. He gets turned into a man and he's dirty, and then he gets turned back into a bird, and then back into a man, and then he's not dirty now. That doesn't make sense. Did he shower in between? Did he go into a bird bath? We didn't see that. How is he clean all of a sudden? Doesn't make sense. Again, you could be like magic, but they turned him into the man with magic, and he had dirt on him then. So why wouldn't the magic take the dirt off him? I'm not having this one. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make enough sense for me. Isn't he just a bird in Sleeping Beauty? And yeah, I think he is. To answer that question, because he's not a bird man in Sleeping Beauty. He's just a bird. In this one, he's a bird man, I guess. Boo. They don't explain the good fairy's relationship with Maleficent well enough, because at the beginning of the movie, they're living in the same world. And then later on in the movie, when Maleficent's sort of the force that's going against the humans, the good fairies that we've established have interacted with Maleficent are now working for the king. And yeah, they don't really establish like what they are. Like they say later that they're pixies. The lore in this doesn't really make sense. What is the relationship between Maleficent and these good fairies? It's not explained that well. Let's see here. Maleficent's transition from good to evil is oddly paced. So it's oddly paced, and I just don't like it generally because they have her at the beginning. She is good. She's sort of like this innocent creature that is being harassed and hassled by the humans. So you like her, but then just all of a sudden, I guess it's because her wings were stolen, and she wants revenge, and she hates the humans now. But the way they show it is weird too. They like have all the creatures that going up to her. She puts on a crown. It's a whole thing, and it's just it feels oddly placed, and it feels weird to me. So moving on from that note, they make it seem like the pixies don't know how to feed the baby, and that the baby could die. So just like in Sleeping Beauty, the good fairies are entrusted with Aurora, the baby, and they're supposed to take care of her. And I get that they're like a little bit dumb and supposed to be a little bit absent-minded, but they're feeding this baby, like they're trying, like when it's a baby, they're trying to feed it carrots and stuff, and Maleficent is watching, like they're gonna kill the baby, and like yeah, they might if they feed it weird shit. And then the baby's running off the cliff, but Maleficent saves her. Little things like that. It just seems crazy to me that they make the pixies seem so bad, but they're the good guys. Like Maleficent is the bad guy, and they're making her good. That's my main point about why this movie isn't good, in my opinion. But yeah, they make it seem like the pixies don't know how to feed the baby, and it seems like they would at least know that, and plus they have magic, and they just give it milk and stuff. It doesn't make sense. And wouldn't the king give them directions? Anyway, we're moving away from that. I just don't think that makes sense to me. they're the good guys. They would have been able to take care of the baby, I think. Anyway, the baby running off the cliff is crazy, but yeah, then Maleficent saves her. I already said that. The baby wouldn't want to be around Maleficent, so they have this scene, and this kind of scene is in so many movies where they have the person who's supposed to be the big bad, which in this case is Maleficent, and then they have a cute little kid, who is in this case Aurora, going up to Maleficent and be like, I want a hug, boogity boogity. And, you know, she's, the point is of the scene is supposed to sort of be like, oh, see, you don't hate Aurora, even though that she's the kid of the guy that tore off your wings. You can't help but be charmed by little Aurora, is the sort of the point of the movie, but it just, I don't think she would have gone up to her. It doesn't make sense. She's scary looking, she's got the big horns, she's like, get away from me, first of all, but she's still like, I want a hug. I don't think that would happen like that. And again, I know this is a movie and magic is involved or whatever, but I just don't think that would have happened here. Doesn't make sense. I didn't realize that this was a remake, but it basically is, so I've sort of already talked about that, but I'll go in a little deeper. So yeah, it's kind of like a remake, but it's more like a reimagining, because it's the same basic story with elements changed. So it's kind of like a remake, but it's just a lot of things they changed I don't think were necessary to change. Some things I did like to change. One thing I can think of is that there's a part in the cartoon where they make everybody sleep, and I remember thinking that wasn't necessary, and they didn't have that in this one, so that part works for me. But yeah, overall, this movie just isn't necessary, and yeah, it's basically a remake or a reimagining, however you want to look at it. And I've already said this, but I'll say it again. They make Maleficent too nice. She's supposed to be the bad guy. She's not a good guy. And I get that this is a villain movie, so you have to give them some redeeming characteristics, but it just doesn't work for the character of Maleficent, in my opinion. The blue slowly fading from the pixie's face is weird. So there's a part where the pixies are like messing around with the cake or whatever. They're trying to make a cake for Aurora, but that scene isn't nearly as good as it is in the original, though. I would have really liked to see that more. But my point is that there's a little piece of like chocolate or something, or blue icing on one of the pixies' faces, the good fairies. They call them pixies, though, so I don't really even know. There's a little bit on her face, and then Aurora comes into the room, and then it like magically fades away. And she's not supposed to know that they're pixies or magical. She's supposed to think they're just humans like her. So wouldn't she ask questions about the thing magically fading from her face? It doesn't make sense. It looked weird, and I was confused by it. And that's another point of me making that there's just points where the CGI is unnecessary, and that's one of them to me. But yeah, the blue slowly fading away just felt a little weird to me, so that's that note. The cake scene could have been better, so I sort of already talked about that. But yeah, it's just sort of like a passing. Like I feel like they put the cake scene in there just because of obligation. They know it's a popular scene, so they put it in there. But it was just sort of like an homage. They're like, oh yeah, there's the cake, but they didn't have the whole fun like scene of them building the cake, which was one of my favorite parts about the original movie. So I would have liked to see that done better. Why did the pixies take the king's shit? So, the king in this one is way more of a dick than in the original movie. And he's like, fucking pixies, and he's like slapping them around and being just awful. But what I'm thinking is, why don't you just use your magic and be like, fuck this guy. We don't need to listen to the king of the humans. They're from the magic world anyway. Why aren't they on Maleficent's side, for one? And for two, yeah, don't take King's shit. He's being an asshole. You know, you shouldn't have to take that shit. You have magic powers, you know? Use them to fuck him up or something. But anyways, they're too good to do that, I guess. You could make that point, but I still feel bad for them when they're taking all that shit. So maybe a little bit of a nitpick, but I do agree with that they shouldn't have had to take all of the king's abuse. He's a meanie. He sort of becomes the villain, I guess. They have to have a new villain, I guess, so it's the king. Because Maleficent she is the villain, but she's not in this movie. Which is my main problem with the film. You can do these villain movies, but I think they should really make them the villain and give them an origin story, and that's okay, but they really haven't been doing this that well. And this maybe be one of the better examples of it, because what else? Morbius and Venom are shit, but this is a different sort of thing too. But I just think it would be better if they just made her more evil and focused on that. Don't change the character that we love, and that's what they did here. I don't like some of the changes towards the end. So one thing I'll mention specifically is, instead of True Love's kiss being from the prince, which is, what you expect, because that's what's in Sleeping Beauty, instead of that happening and working and waking up Aurora, instead it's Maleficent's kiss that wakes her up, which is so fucking dumb, because now she loves Aurora, because she's the good guy, even though she should be the villain. I kind of hated that. It was like, really? That's what you're going with? That's True Love's kiss? Maleficent? Like the love of an aunt or whatever she basically is. It's crazy to me. So that's one of the changes that I don't like towards the end. Wouldn't Maleficent say she saved Aurora? So there's a part where the king and all his men are trying to stop Maleficent because she's at his castle. But wouldn't you at least say, like, hey, I saved your daughter? Because she just did. She just woke her up with a kiss and saved her life. She was in the sleep, the cursed sleep, until she got woken up by True Love's kiss, and she saved her. So why wouldn't she say that? I mean, they could have been like, no, you didn't. They could have not believed her, but I think just having that line in there would have made sense for her to plead her case and be like, don't attack me. I tried to save her. Just let me leave. But no, instead, she doesn't say that. And they have a big fight, and she turns the raven into a dragon, which is kind of cool. Admittedly, I kind of like that part, where she turns the raven into the dragon. But you gotta have a dragon because the dragon's in the cartoon, and that's one of the coolest parts of the cartoon, is the dragon. But yeah, I think she should have said, "Hey, I saved your daughter. Don't be mad at me." But they don't even have that line in there. Anyway, moving on. Next note. Maleficent is not evil enough, so that's sort of basically the same note as she's too good, but let's go with that. Yeah, she's not evil enough. Like I said, that's my main problem with this movie, is that she's not enough like the original character that we love so much. Angelina Jolie is doing a good job in the role, but I don't want an anti-hero. I want a villain, because that's what Maleficent is, and she's just not evil enough. Maybe they changed that in the second one, I don't know, but like I said, I don't really want to review that one. Unless people really, really want me to, and then maybe, but until we get there, I'm not doing it. Last one, ending is basically a fuck you to the original. So, I do think this, because at the end of the movie, they're like, so this is how the story goes. You might have heard it in a different way, an untrue way, but this is the true story. So basically it's saying, fuck Sleeping Beauty. It's not the real story. This is what actually happened. And to that I say, fuck you, movie. Are you kidding me? You're just overwriting the whole movie. You're saying this is the truth? No, fuck that. I'm not having that. I refuse to believe it. The real story is Sleeping Beauty. That's the story. That's the lore. Fuck that. This isn't what happened. I hated it. Well, maybe I hate it, but I didn't like, especially that ending kind of pissed me off. So, without any further ado, I think that we can rate it and maybe rate out here. So let's look. Maleficent. I'm going to give it, so I did like some things about it. So, I liked the way it looked. Angelina Jolie puts in a good performance. There are a couple things that I think it does better than the original, but for the most part, the original is clearly better, in my opinion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a 4. A little bit below 5. Still better than Biodome. Still better than Godzilla 2014, in my opinion. But it's not good. I didn't like it. I don't really recommend it unless what I said sounds interesting to you at all. Then it's on Disney Plus if you're into it. But yeah, the main thing is she could be eviler. She should be eviler. They try to make her too good, and that sort of takes away from the character that we all love, the evil, the mistress of evil who is Maleficent. And that's why this movie just is not as good as it could have been. If they leaned into more of her being her true character of what she is supposed to be from what we've seen in the original cartoon, then it would have been more interesting and more entertaining, a little darker. It would have been cooler to see, instead of they're just like, yeah, she's evil, but she's not that evil, and that just makes it less interesting to me. So with that being said, I'm going to give Maleficent 4 out of 10 Dougs.